He's never fought us. Not us united.
My favorite moment in the entire... Maybe I should complicate this before I start speaking here.
Welcome to Comics League Indie Wednesday. I'm Jared, and today we're talking about Mass Effect. All right, so to give you guys a little introduction, Mass Effect is basically a video game series made by the studio that gave us Knights of the Old Republic, the original, where it's an RPG. You're playing as this intergalactic badass Master Chief character named Commander Shepard, and you're trying to stop basically the galactic apocalypse from happening. Now, important point here. So there's three main games, and if you played like I guess it's called the Legendary Edition, you know what I'm talking about. There's three main games of Shepard, and your character carries over throughout all the games. Now, what's important is that there are gaps in time between each of the games, and sometimes during the game's timeline, where things are like not explained. So that's where the comics come in. The comics are meant to like fill in certain like gaps, tell you what was going on at the same time as the games, or like give you origins for characters that they never really explored. The story I'm going to talk about now is, by the way, is in this. I love how they call it an omnibus, but if you look at it compared to like JLA by Grant Morrison, it's more like a trade paperback. So we're going to talk about the storyline called... let's see, what's this storyline called? It's basically the storyline where they find Shepard's body. So at the end of Mass Effect 1, actually, no, it's the beginning of Mass Effect 2, Shepard ship the Normandy is on like a scanning mission trying to find these robots called the Geth. And the ship encounters the ship encounters an alien spacecraft run by a group called the Collectors. And the ship is like ridiculously advanced, like destroys the Normandy, and Shepard is presumed dead. We don't know what happens to his body. This is what happens to his body. So we open up. Let me sure. Is this where we open up? Yeah. You open up at the space station called Omega, which basically looks like High Charity for you Halo fans. And we have a spaceship approaching the space station before and we have Liara. She was a crew member, actually in all three of the main Mass Effect games. She's one of the most famous crew members and love interests. And she's a biotic, which basically means, think of it like she has telekinesis and can think of her like Professor X, kind of, in that she doesn't have like, actually, no, is she Professor X? Not really. Think of her like she can move objects and stuff, yeah. And she can like throw out like basically energy blasts. So her thing is she's trying to find like Shepard's body. And she runs into a Drell, which are basically these aliens. They look like reptiles or something like that. They're trying to find so his name is Farron, and she's basically so once again she's trying to find Shepard. He's an agent for a being called the Shadow Broker. Think of him like Oracle, only evil. What I mean by that is that he's an information broker. You encounter him in a DLC in Game 2, which is super fun. And they're assaulted by mercenaries until they are assailed by a Krogan. The Krogan is like this giant, like Hulk-like beast right here. And that's Liara right here. By the way, I'm going to try and get the Comic Cam back operational later. It's sniped, and then you find out there's this group called Cerberus. Cerberus is basically a human supremacist group that wants to revive Shepard. They have the technology to do so. They basically have to rebuild him with a bunch of cybernetics, but they can revive him because they're tracking this legend called the Reapers. And the Reapers are basically these sentient starships that show up every 100,000 years and wipe out all advanced spacefaring life. Because the idea is that if you get spacefaring, you'll eventually get to war. So their idea is that we need Shepard because he's the only one that can lead us to fight the Reapers. And the Reapers invade Mass Effect 3, and you eventually unite the galaxy. But anyway, Miranda Lawson, who eventually becomes a love interest in Mass Effect 2, and your second in command, she tells you, okay, so come meet my boss, the Elusive Man, played by Charlie Sheen in the games. He basically says, hey, there are these beings called collectors, and they're the ones that took out the Normandy. And the Shadow Broker is working with them to get Shepard's body. Because the idea, why would you may be wondering, why would an information broker want Shepard's like corpse? It's because it's worth a lot of money. If you have the corpse of Commander Shepard, that's equivalent to like finding like the corpse of to discovering kryptonite in, well, actually not discovering kryptonite. Let me put it this way: it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. So he says, okay, so you work with us, and we'll help you find Shepard's body. You need us. You have you need the resources. And so she basically says, I'm not working with you. I'm working to get Shepard back. Then we get the whole story about right here about the Normandy being taken out. The Normandy is this ship. The Normandy being taken out by the collector ship right here. It's the story. If you open up Mass Effect 2, the first like part of the game, before you even customize your character, because Shepard wears a helmet in this part, is the attack on the Normandy, and you're navigating it as the ship is being torn apart. So that's like where the game is first starting up. So Miranda, Liara, and Theron go to Omega. Think of Omega as a space station version of Mos Eisley, and that it's a den of scum and villainy. It's basically lawless, except for there is this individual named Liara Tsoni. She basically runs everything. She's like Kingpin, and that she runs everything that happens on Omega happens either with her permission or her like allowing it to happen. In other words, she goes, okay, I'll let that happen. It's not going to threaten my power, so I'll just let it go. That's the way it normally works. So then they find out that so what happens is that eventually they find out that Theron was an agent of the Shadow Broker, and he's one that gave their name to the mercenaries. It turns out he's being paid really well. And then they eventually find Liara Tsoni, who basically tells them, okay, so the collectors are going to be there. So they fall out, and then they engage. They find the mercenaries that have Shepard's body. He's in this sort of like coffin-like structure, and Liara moves in, and they start engaging the enemy with her biotic powers, while Shepard's body is loaded onto a transport and then just evacuated off Omega. At the same time, Cerberus tracks it and then follows it through basically hyperspace before they're engaged by fighter craft. And then it basically turns into, think of it like in episode 2 of Star Wars, the fight in the asteroid belt. That's kind of what it turns into. Then they track the ship carrying Commander Shepard to an asteroid, to a remote planet named Alangon. I'm trying to pronounce that right. They head down to the surface, and the plan is that Theron is going to pretend to because it's a Shadow Broker facility. So Theron is going to pretend that, oh, I captured Liara, so I'm going to bring her in as a price because she's an expert on this ancient race called the Protheans. Now, the Protheans, for you Halo players, think of them like the Forerunners. They built a lot of the technology that all the races of the galaxy rely on. And they mysteriously vanished 100,000 years ago. It turns out they are the collectors. For those of you that haven't played the game, spoilers, but at this point, they are the collectors, and that's a collector right here. So basically, they find a FaceTime screen with the Shadow Broker. It's not what the Shadow Broker actually looks like, but yeah, it's basically like, think of it like in Star Wars, whenever Darth Sidious would like hologram into a meeting. At the same time, Liara completely tears the place apart, and they eventually just go through and kill the mercenaries. And then eventually he tells her where Shepard is. They find him because what happened was they were going to give it to the mercenaries in the Shadow Broker. Were going to give the body to the collectors, because remember, the collectors are Reapers essentially. Because what the Reapers do when they capture you is they transform the alien race. It's called It's basically called Ascension. And what they do is think of it like the Flood, where they assimilate you and they turn you into like Reaper-fied versions of your alien race. So they want Shepard because even they know he's the only one that could stop us. So Theron and Liara eventually find Shepard and engage both the collectors and the mercenaries, and then they actually escape him. I mean, they actually find him. Except Theron is captured by the Shadow Broker, and his fate will be revealed in the Mass Effect 2 DLC Layer of the Shadow Broker. But she escapes, and Theron stays behind, and then she brings Shepard to Cerberus, where they start the process of rebuilding him that was basically outlined in Mass Effect 2. So that's the first story of the Mass Effect comic series, and I enjoy it. I thought it was pretty cool. The art is pretty stellar, as a matter of fact, and I like them filling in like the basically story holes, because for those of you that play the game, there's only so much that the games themselves can cover. And actually, if you're playing Halo, it's the same thing, same concept. So I definitely enjoy getting more into the lore, because I'm one of those guys that when I play a franchise that I really like, I dig into the lore, because when you dig into the lore, you really get it really changes the way you see the games, because all of a sudden character motivations make even more sense than they would if you didn't. Because yeah, to a certain degree, the games can like give you an idea on who these characters are, why they do what they do, but the thing is, you get more of an understanding. Like you get a better idea of who the Master Chief is when you read the books, because you understand that he will protect his team no matter what. It kind of explains his out of characterness in Halo 5 a little bit, but that's besides the point. The Halo show in no way is based on any of the lore. I just wanted to back that up, but I definitely like, because you get the idea of who these characters are. It's like when you see like Zack Snyder's Justice League, and you go and read Justice League comics and each of the individual comics of the characters, and it gives you the idea of why they act the way they do in the movies. So again, fantastic series. I may cover more of these if you guys like, because there's like plenty of storylines that I can cover, plenty of shorter ones too. But it's definitely a fun thing to cover on Indie Wednesday. And by the way, this was done by Dark Horse Entertainment. So on that note, I'm going to call this one to an end. Hope you guys enjoyed this Indie Wednesday, and I will see you in the next one. Remember, stay heroic, and I will see you actually this Friday for Comics League Dark. All right, stay heroic. Bye-bye.